In this video, I'm going to show you how you can build and backtest your own crypto trading algorithm. You can have an idea of a buy signal or a sell signal, and you can program that in, and this machine will just go back in time over all this historical data for a crypto that you select and pretend trade that and tell you how profitable you would have been, what your risk to reward would have been, what your maximum drawdown would have been, etc. And that's something I'm actually going to do live with you right now in this tutorial. But just to put some context around this, what we're saying here is that you can come up with your own strategy, and you might have a number of different ideas and hypotheses you want to test. You can come up with those, test those, find what's profitable, and then you can go and trade using that logic in your trading. Now, why is this so powerful? Well, number one, it takes out a lot of emotion, because a machine is trading for you and telling you factually, here's how much money you would have made and lost. Here's the percentage return you would have got. And it will show you on the chart where the buy signals are, where the sell signals are, etc. So, we have optimism bias. When we look at chart patterns, etc., and go, oh, this strategy looks like it works. Really, it doesn't, because you're looking for it to work because you want to make money. But when you program something into a machine, it will just do it for you. And the other thing is it will save you hours and hours and hours of time. And the better you get at this, the faster you get at being able to come up with an idea, put it into some code. And by the way, you need no programming knowledge for this tutorial. I'm going to show you everything paint by numbers from scratch. I'm going to explain each section to you just in this one video. So you're going to get a good understanding of the basics just from this video that you can build on top of. But just with that knowledge, you can then test a lot of different strategies, find the ones that are working for you. And why is that important? Well, if you think about all the bots that are out there that you can buy, well, everyone has access to those bots, and trading is a zero-sum game. Why not come up with your own ideas, implement them and test them? And as I spoke about in the last video about the book Millionaire Traders, that's exactly what somebody did in the foreign exchange market, in the stock market, that really inspired me to learn this stuff. So it's super cool. You're going to see how easy it is to do. So let's jump into it. So the first thing we want to do is go to sandbox.crix.io. So we covered this in the previous video, and it's absolutely free to use right now. I don't know how long it'll be free for, but it's free right now. And you can come over here and program in a strategy. So what you want to do is go to this bot section over here, sandbox.crix.io, and you'll notice in my algorithms, I've deleted everything. I'm going to do this tutorial completely from scratch for you live right now. And I'm going to show you how I think about it, each of the sections, so step by step. So you can also see there's some pre-made algorithms. So whenever you're thinking about using RSI or MACD, you can actually go back here and look at the code they're using and make sense of it and deploy that in your own strategy. So that's actually really useful that these guys have put all of this pre-existing code here, because it's going to show you exactly what you need to use in order to build a fuller strategy. But here we're just going to use a real basic strategy because understanding the fundamentals is what's important, because then you can build any house you want. So here I'm going to just call this test, and I'm going to call it V1. And if you're building an RSI strategy, you would name it RSI, something like that. And I'm going to build this algorithm. So the nice thing about this sandbox.crix platform is it just creates a ton of code for me already. And I said you don't need to be a programmer to be able to do this. Well, you do need to learn some programming, but it's so basic and straightforward that you don't need any existing experience. In fact, you're going to learn some Python right now. Now, a few of the things I want to do is just get rid of all these comments over here. In fact, this one over here, I'm going to keep in for now. And I'm going to just put a little hashtag back in there. Now, hashtag over here just means to comment something out. It means that when the program runs, it won't read this item here in gray. So for example, if I want to put a note to myself, note to self, happy birthday, even though it's not my birthday, whatever. You can put pink elephants and orange monkeys in there. Now, the reason why I left this comment in here with this enigma.co/catalyst is if I come up here in my browser and put that web address in, you can see there's a whole library with tutorials, etc., on all of the code, functions, etc., when you want to go deeper, when you want to understand something. So you can come and just browse this to your heart's content and learn a heck of a lot about what's behind this engine, allowing you to do all this back testing. So that link is actually provided to you when you create a new strategy. It's already there for you there. Now let's just get rid of some of this other text quickly, because I want this to be as straightforward as possible, and I just don't want all this. It's actually very helpful when you're new to have this text. But for this tutorial, it's just kind of in the way. So what I want to do is just get rid of all of these comments that we don't really need and leave it like that. So these are the main sections that we're going to work with over here. First, we have this import section. And really what this is doing is this is giving us access to Python libraries and frameworks where we don't have to do a lot of coding because all the coding is kind of pre-done for us. And you can just leave this section as it is. It's put here for you. You don't need to really understand it right now. You don't really need to do anything with it right now. You can just leave it as it is. You don't need to touch it. And then down here, we have some criteria around what we actually want to go and backtest and where that's coming from. What data do we want to use? Well, we want to use data from the Crix platform, which is where we are now. So sandbox.crix.io. So we just leave that as it is. The coin here we're going to trade with is Ethereum to Bitcoin. So that we'll just leave it like it is for now. And our capital base is to Bitcoin. So quote currency is to Bitcoin, just like we set up here. Symbol name is to Bitcoin, quote currency Bitcoin. Our capital base is how much Bitcoin do we want to trade with. So this is 1 Bitcoin. I could make it 10, I could make it 1,000, I can make it 1, I can make it 0.5, whatever. We're just going to stick with 1. Down here, this is the trading frequency. So what data do we need? Do we need minute by minute data or do we need daily data? So are you wanting to trade based on a daily time frame or an intraday time frame? Well, I'm quite happy with daily for this tutorial. And then in terms of the dates, you can select the range of data that you want. So how much data, i.e. looking at this chart, this is a good example. How much data do I need? Am I just looking for this time period over here, or am I looking for like a year's worth of data? Well, I'm just going to take, I don't know, December 2018 to, we'll take it to January the 30th, 2019. So just some small set of data for the purpose of this tutorial. Now to define the asset we want to trade once more, we actually need to put that in this initialize section that's created for us. So context.asset equals symbol name. Now this is kind of interesting because what does that mean? How does it know what symbol we're trading? Well, if we go up here, we can actually see the symbol name we defined as Ethereum to Bitcoin. And you can really define anything. I can put in here pink elephants if I want to, equals, Ethereum to Bitcoin. And then I can put, if I wanted to, pink elephants down here in this section, and it will still give me the same result. So that's all that's doing. Anyway, symbol name is far more intuitive than pink elephants, so we'll leave that as it is. And this is where we've defined our asset that we want to trade. Now, that's all the straightforward part. Now it gets to us actually putting in the logic we want to program. So we go to this handle data section. So let me explain what's going on with this handle data. If we go back to our chart over here, for every bar, for every price point that we're iterating through over here, there is some logic that we want to run, i.e. what is the price now? What is it versus before? Where's RSI, etc., etc. So as that data rolls in on each time period, we wanted to execute this and check, should I be placing a trade? Should I be closing a trade? Should I be doing nothing? That's essentially what we're trying to program in over here. So here's where we're going to tell it to look at the data. Here's where we're going to tell it to look at some indicators if we want them, or price action, etc. And for this tutorial, we'll just focus on price action because the information on indicators, etc. I'll cover in other videos. We just want to cover the fundamentals here. So the first thing we wanted to do is to grab data. And fortunately, again, this Crix platform has essentially just put this code in here for you. So you're not going to need to write this yourself. It's already here. And it's saying, okay, get me some historical data. And when you do that, what does that equal? Well, that equals this data.history. Now you can see that data is passed here into the section. So you don't need to tell it where to get the data from. It's actually built into the platform and it's passed in here. You can see the context is also passed in here. And we already know what the context asset is. It's Ethereum to Bitcoin. So this is saying, okay, so let's get some historical data. We need the context.asset, which we know is Ethereum to Bitcoin because we've labeled it up here and that's been passed through. The bar count is how many bars worth of data do you want at any point in time? Do I want to look at, 3 bars worth of data, 2 bars worth of data, 1, 7? In fact, over here, we will look at a week's worth of data. So we'll look at 7 bars at every point in time. So every point in time, it's going to grab us the last 7 bars of data. And then we want price, open, high, low, close, volume. So these are all the fields we want. We're actually just going to be working with close, and I'm going to show you how we reference that in a second. So I'm just going to build a strategy that's just looking at the close price and what that's doing, and based on that to trade based off of that information. And then the frequency is 1 day. So these are 1 day time frame pieces of data that we want to pull in. Perfect. It's all done for us. But now we're going to go and do some coding ourselves. So let's just talk about the actual strategy that we want to deploy here. I'm thinking that what we'll do is we'll look at, okay, what was the price change over the last week? And if it was positive, we'll just put in a buy order. If it was negative, we'll close out the buy order or do nothing. So we'll just do something really, really basic like that, so you can see how we put those conditions in here to tell it whether or not to buy and sell. And we'll do it off of something really straightforward, which is just the price that we have available here, which is the close price. Now, one of the things I want to do very quickly though, is I just want to go print, and I'm going to explain what this does in a minute. You don't have to do this, by the way, but printing historical data, which is this pandas data frame over here. So you'll see we imported pandas over here. You don't need to know what it does, but it's essentially supporting this data frame. When we do that and we run the algorithm, down here in this log section, we will actually see that data frame. So I'm just going to print it out to show you what the data looks like and how it's referencing that. So you don't have to do that, but I like to do that. So now we want to go and put in our strategy. Now let's think about our strategy. Our strategy is, okay, if price has gone up over the last 7 days, then go long. If it's gone down, then close your position or do nothing. That's what we want to do. So in order to do that, we need to know what was the price change over the last 7 days. So that's the first thing I'm going to go and code in now. And the way that we can reference that is we just go historical data and we reference the close price. So we put that in the square brackets, so the close price. And then over here, I just want to segue very quickly into talking about Python arrays, because when we get this data frame, it's actually going to look something like this, what I have open in front of me here in Excel. So when we get this data through, we want to tell it to find the close price, and we want the current close price. Here I've called it latest, but we can also think of it as current. I want the current close price, and I want to compare it to the earliest close price. Now, these are not Ethereum to Bitcoin prices here. This is just random data plugged into Excel. Now, when you look at this, there are 7 rows of data. If I count them, we go up to the number 7 because we're starting with 0. And this is really, really important. This is where most people trip up and can't understand why their program isn't working. When working with Python and you're going through an array like this, so the close price is here over the last 7 days, this is what we call an array. It needs to be referenced based on the index that Python uses. So Python uses for the first row of data 0. Looks at that as 0. And then the 7th would be the number 6. Now there's a cool little trick we can do. If we want to reference this number 6, this latest close price, we don't actually have to count the data. We can put -1. So we can tell Python to jump back 1 step. And when it does that, it jumps to the end of the data here. So it goes from here all the way down to here because it's jumping back through this, almost think of it like an infinite loop, right? So that's how we can reference the latest price, is just -1. If we want the earliest price, we just need to put 0. So I could use the number 6 here as well, but I'm just going to put -1, or we can use 0 if we're referencing the earliest, the first data point. So with that explained, if you've got any questions, you can always ask. I'm just going to put in here -1. So we've got historical data close -1. Now, what is historical data close -1? Well, we said that that needs to be the latest price, which we're going to call the current price, current close. And our current close is equal to the historical data close price -1. So now that we know our current close price, let's get our starting close price, which is going to be equal to historical data. And again, it's going to be the close price. And we're going to put in here 0. And so when we do that, now we have the first data point. So going back over here to Excel, we have the first data point here. That's the 0. So now all I need to do is take the difference between the two, and I know what my net change is. So I'm going to do that over here. So I'm going to go net change. And I could call that pink elephants if I wanted to, but net change, again, it makes more sense. Net change is equal to, and I'm going to put this in brackets, the current close minus the starting close. And I don't need to do this as a percent, but I will anyway. I'll just put it divided by starting close. And that'll give me a percentage. So that's my net change. Now, when we run this strategy, we actually are going to see a chart appear on the right, which is very handy. It's going to tell us our profit and loss and how that grows or shrinks. It's going to show us the chart, but I can also get it to plot other information as well. And I'm going to do that because I wanted to plot this net change so that I can actually see the net change on the chart referenced against the buy signals and the sell signals just from a visual perspective. So I'm going to put in here plot and context, because that's what I need to pass in, is the context of this asset, etc. And we're going to label the chart net change, because that's what we're putting in. And that's going to be equal to, well, the net change, because that's essentially what we've just defined over here. So it's going to be labeled net change, and it will give us the number of the net change that we calculated here on that chart. So how cool is that? So we've calculated our net change, but now we need to know how to place an order. So let's say it actually meets our criteria, and I'm going to build that in for you in a second. We'll do how to know if it's met the criteria, etc. in a second. But how do we actually place an order? Well, to place an order, you just do something as simple as order target percent. And if you wondered where this came from, number one, you can look at the pre-existing strategies here on the platform. And you can also go back to what I showed you earlier with this library here on the enigma.co/catalyst. So what we want to do is go order target percent, and then we want to pass in here context.asset. And this is pretty cool. I can tell it whether I want to use all of my capital or some of my capital, whatever. We're going to use 75% of a capital. So I'll just put in 0.75 or 0.75, whatever you prefer. And that will tell me to buy Ethereum to Bitcoin. Now, if we ran this, what will happen is it'll try and buy Ethereum to Bitcoin on every time iteration of data, which is not what we want. What we wanted to do is only buy if, number one, we don't already own some, and close out our position if we do own some and prices moved against us. So that's what we want to tell it to do. Now, the way that we go and do that is we put in what's called an if statement. And this is very, very useful. You're going to use this all the time, and you're learning some Python over here, which is really cool. So the way we do that is we say, okay, we only want to buy if our net change is greater than 0. So that's saying that we want to go long if price in the last 7 days has actually gone up. And we don't know whether we've already bought some or not. So what we need to do is assume we're at the very start of this loop, the very first time period over here. Well, in the very first time period, we've done nothing because we've only just started analyzing, or the machine has only just started analyzing. So what we want to do is create a variable over here called bought. And this will be whether we've bought some or not. And we'll call that false, meaning that right now we haven't bought anything. At the very start of this, we're setting that to say we haven't bought anything, which makes sense because when you first start, you wouldn't have bought anything. And down here in handle data, we need to do something here, which is globalize that variable. So we're going to go global bought. What that does is it makes sure that every time iteration of this data, so every time it comes back through and runs handle data, it remembers what the bought position was from the previous run. So it's going to remember that variable until we change it, which is why we put in this global piece over here. If that didn't make too much sense, don't worry about it. Just go with it for now. So here we have, if the net change is greater than 0, and we want to make sure, or sorry, I should say, and we want to make sure that we have not bought any of this, then we want to go and place an order to buy. So this is how it looks. So we put if the net change is greater than 0 and we've not bought any of this crypto, colon, then with an indentation, and the indentation tells the code that this part of the code is part of this if statement. So that's how it knows it's do this if that. This is the do this piece, and it knows to do that with the indentation. So if the net change is greater than 0 and we've not bought, then go and buy 75% of this crypto. That's our logic baked in right there. Now, once you've done that, then bought needs to be equal to true because we've just bought some. So that takes care of buying the crypto. And so down here, I'm just going to put a comment, buying some coin. We're just going to say buying some coin. And down here, what we need to now do is take care of selling some coin. And I want you just to think for a second as I'm putting in this comment, how you would change your if statement over here. So we're just going to comment all of this. We're going to copy all of this from buying the coin and paste it down here and selling the coin. And we're going to change some things. So thinking about it, what would we do to close out our position? Well, the first thing is we want to close out our position when the price change goes negative. So in other words, it's less than 0. So we're just going to change that. And the other thing is we only want to close out a position if we've already bought into a position. So what I'm going to do is just get rid of that not bought piece and just say and bought. So if the net change has now gone against us and we've bought, then we need to close out what we have. So our order target percent, we're actually just going to change that to 0. And so when we change that to 0, that's going to sell all the holding that we have of that coin. And the bought is going to be false because now we've not bought any, we've sold it. We're not holding any crypto. And that is our logic there. And for today's tutorial, we're just going to leave it at that, because if you can understand this, how to put in an if statement, how to buy the coin, how to say whether or not you've bought the coin, then you're already so far on this journey. And I'm going to show you how you can get some more ideas to add into your strategy. I'm also going to be doing some other videos as well. So this is super cool. What we now want to do is test and make sure that we've done all of this properly and actually run our strategy. So all I need to do up here is click Save Strategy, just to make sure I don't lose any of that, and then run Simulate Strategy. And you're going to see it really doesn't take very long to run. In fact, it's probably going to run it in a matter of seconds, and then it's going to spit out all sorts of interesting information, which I'm going to take you through right about now. So this is awesome. So it's already brought up the stats for me on the output. This algorithm surprisingly has returned 27.5%, which is really interesting because the market returned roughly 11.2%, meaning that we beat the market by 16%. Now, granted, I only ran this over a small time period, December 2018 to Jan 2019, but that's actually pretty good. And our Sharpe ratio, and if you don't know what Sharpe ratio is, you can go back and watch my previous video on that. But the Sharpe ratio is pretty high. Essentially what this is saying is for every risk we're taking into account, we're getting a reward of about 3. So 2.9 to every risk we're taking, which is actually pretty good. And our maximum drawdown is only 9% compared to other strategies I've seen, which can be a lot higher. So this very surprisingly basic strategy has returned some really good results. And if I go over here to the log section, if you remember, I printed the data, the historical data. We went print historical data, and you can actually see that information over here. So let me just close that down here where we said print historical data, and I'm just going to open it up again. Here you can see the actual data that it's been looking at in order to go and make that judgment. It's not giving you all the data for every time period. It's just giving you a snapshot over here, which is really cool. And our output again shows us the stats, the return we would have got, the Sharpe ratio, the max drawdown, etc., which is really cool. But what I want to turn your attention to now is the chart section. So here we can see the return of the strategy. So the green line's going up, which is a good thing because it's showing us how much profit or loss we would have made. And here we have the actual chart itself. And I can see green circles and red circles. Green circles mean bought, red circles mean sold, and that actually shows me on the chart where I would have bought and sold. And so you can run this over a much longer data frame or data time period, and you'll see more greens and more reds depending on what you programmed in. And remember, we were looking at 7 days worth of data at any point in time to calculate the price change. So when I look down here at this brown bar over here, you can see it says net change. It says net change over here. And why does it say that? Well, because we told it to say net change, and the value it's putting is the net change that it calculated. So it's actually telling us here we went above 0, and that's why it placed this green bar. And then later on it went below 0, and that's why it placed this red bar over here. So this is really cool. It's super user friendly. If this is your first time seeing this kind of algorithmic programming, congratulations, because actually we've covered an awful lot. And if you can just go over this yourself, go into the sandbox.crix.io, go to the bot section, open up one of the strategies, read through it, try and understand what's going on. You can easily learn this very quickly with no programming knowledge at all. As usual, if you have any questions, there's a feedback button on the bottom right of the sandbox.crix.io platform, as well as wherever you see this video. If there's a comment section, you can ask any questions there too. So if you found that useful, then fantastic. and I'll see you in the next tutorial.